You ever have one of those days where life just decides to test you? Yeah, that was me sitting at my kitchen table with a lukewarm cup of coffee in one hand and a thin white envelope in the other. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't junk mail. It was worse. It was a letter from my HOA. Now, if you've ever lived in a neighborhood with an HOA, you already know the vibe. They're supposed to protect property values and maintain community standards. But in reality, sometimes it feels like they're just bored people with clipboards and too much free time. Walking around measuring grass height and deciding if your front door is the right shade of beige. And this time, they had a new target.me, more specifically. My dog C. I've got this golden retriever named Max. Sweetest guy you'll ever meet. Loves belly rubs, peanut butter, and pretending he's a guard dog whenever the Amazon delivery guy shows up. Yeah, Max barks because he's a dog. But according to my HOA, Max had been excessively barking during the day. Apparently, one of my neighbors filed a complaint, and now I had a fine. Not a warning. Not a, hey, could you maybe keep Max inside for a bit? Nope, a straight-up $500 fine. $500. For barking. I remember staring at that paper like it was some kind of joke. But it wasn't. It was real. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. The letter made it clear. If the barking continued, I'd be fined again. And again. And again. Until, in their words, the nuisance was resolved. Now, I could have just paid the fine. I could have tried one of those ultrasonic bark devices. I could have begged my neighbor for mercy. But that's not what I did. Because that letter, it flipped a switch in me. And instead of just shutting Max up, I decided to shut them up permanently. But before I tell you how I went from angry dog dad to accidental neighborhood overlord, you've got to understand one thing. I don't like being pushed. At all. And when the HOA came after me, they didn't just wake up a barking golden retriever. They woke up a grizzly bear. It started with research. I dug into the HOA's bylaws, their budget, their meeting minutes, all the boring stuff nobody ever reads. I found out who was in charge, how decisions got made, and how much power they really had. And here's the thing most people don't realize. HOAs aren't some untouchable government agency. They're just corporations. Legal entities. And like any corporation, they can be bought. At first, I laughed at the idea. Buying the HOA. That sounded insane. But the deeper I looked, the less insane it became. The HOA wasn't flush with cash. In fact, they were struggling. A lot of neighbors hated paying dues. Some were behind on payments. Others were threatening lawsuits. That's when the idea hit me. What if, instead of fighting the HOA, I just became the HOA? Shift to suspenseful tone now. Here's where things get wild. I didn't just attend the next HOA meeting. I came in prepared. I rallied a few neighbors who were also fed up. Mrs. Thompson down the street hated the HOA because they fined her for having too many garden gnomes. The Smiths hated them because their holiday lights were apparently too bright. We had a coalition of rebels ready to go. And at that meeting, when the board started their usual power trip about mailbox colors, I spoke up. I asked the one question nobody ever asks. How much debt is the HOA in? The room went quiet. Turns out, they were in the red. Bad. And the only thing keeping them afloat was us, the homeowners, paying dues and fines. That's when I made my move. I offered them a bailout. A check. Enough to clear the debt and then some. But there was a catch. I wanted control. And after a few heated arguments, some dirty looks, and more than one dramatic slam of the gavel, they agreed. Just like that. I wasn't just the guy with the barking dog anymore. I was the HOA president. And let me tell you, the very first rule I changed. No fines for barking dogs. In fact, dogs got priority. But here's the twist. I didn't stop there, because once I got a taste of power, once I realized I could shape this neighborhood however I want, I had another idea. Why not turn the whole place into something better? Why not make it a dog park? Asterisk, asterisk. I wish I could tell you that becoming HOA president was the end of the story. That the barking fines disappeared. Max lived happily ever after. And I spent the rest of my days sipping lemonade on the porch like some suburban king. But no. See? When you suddenly take control of something people thought was untouchable, you don't just get applause. You get enemies, and boy, did I make some enemies at first. The neighborhood was split. Half the people loved me. I got thank you cookies, handshakes, even a few finally someone stood up to those clowns' comments. But the other half? They were furious. To them, I wasn't a hero. I was a tyrant who bought his way to power. And the loudest of them all was the neighbor who had complained about Max's barking in the first place. Her name was Karen. No, seriously. Her actual name was Karen. You can't make this stuff up. Karen was the type of neighbor who lived for drama. You know the type: curtains always twitching, every delivery truck suspicious, always ready with a clipboard. Her grass was exactly 2.5 inches tall, her driveway pressure washed weekly, and her poor husband. Well, let's just say I never once saw him smile. Karen came after me like I had personally declared war on her existence. You can't just buy the HOA. She shouted at me in front of a group of neighbors one morning. This is a democracy. I calmly reminded her that technically, the HOA bylaws allowed financial intervention in exchange for board authority. In other words, yep, I could, and I already had. She didn't like that answer. Not one bit. From that moment on, it was like living in a chess match. Every move I made to loosen the HOA's grip on people's lives, Karen countered. If I allowed holiday lights year-round, she'd file a complaint about light pollution. If I let people paint their mailboxes whatever color they wanted, she'd bring up property devaluation. It was relentless. But the thing about relentless, I can be relentless too, and the difference between me and Karen. I had a plan. It started small. I wanted to prove that loosening rules could actually improve the neighborhood. So the first thing I did, after canceling the barking fines, was host a community event. Nothing crazy, just a Saturday afternoon block party at the little patch of green space near the entrance. Food trucks, live music, bouncy castle for the kids, and of course, dog-friendly everything. I'll never forget the look on Max's face when he bounded across that grass with about 20 other dogs chasing tennis balls, tails wagging, tongues out. That was the moment the idea in my head really came alive. Why not make this feeling permanent? Why not make this neighborhood one giant dog park paradise? At the block party, I tested the waters. As people munched on tacos and sipped lemonade, I floated the idea casually. Wouldn't it be cool if the HOA focused more on community and less on fines? What if we had dog-friendly spaces, walking trails, maybe even agility courses? The response: overwhelmingly positive. Parents loved the idea of more safe spaces. Dog owners practically hugged me. Even the retirees who didn't have pets said it sounded like it would raise the neighborhood's value. Everyone was into it. Except Karen. She stood there with her arms crossed, whispering poison in anyone's ear who would listen. "This will destroy our property values," she hissed. "Do you really want to live in a kennel?" But here's the thing, when you're standing in the middle of laughter, music, wagging tails, and community spirit, doom and gloom doesn't carry much weight. For the first time, I realized I had the neighborhood's heart, and that's when the real fun began. Over the next few months, I started making changes. Rule number 1, no more grass fines. If you wanted a jungle in your front yard, fine. If you wanted turf, go for it. You want to mow your lawn into the shape of a giant smiley face? Be my guest. Rule number 2. No more mailbox color restrictions. One guy painted his to look like R2-D2. Another family did theirs rainbow striped. Someone even turned theirs into a miniature lighthouse. And you know what? It made the neighborhood more fun. Rule number 3. We built the first official dog zone. Nothing fancy, just a fenced-off section with a couple benches and a water fountain. But it was the start, and it was packed every single evening. Every change I made, every rule I dismantled felt like another brick knocked out of the wall the old HOA had built around us. But Karen, she wasn't letting go. She started showing up at meetings with binders of evidence, decibel charts, screenshots of next-door posts, Zillow articles about maintaining uniform aesthetics. She even hired a lawyer to challenge my authority. But what Karen didn't realize was that by fighting me so hard, she was actually helping me, because nothing rallies people together like a common enemy, and Karen had just volunteered herself for the role. One night, after another long meeting where Karen tried and failed to block my plans, I sat on my back porch with Max curled at my feet. I looked out across the neighborhood, quiet under the glow of streetlights. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just fighting for my dog anymore. I was building something bigger. This neighborhood had been under the thumb of an HOA that cared more about mailbox paint than human happiness. Now, it could be something different. It could be a place where dogs and people thrive together. Place where kids could ride bikes without someone complaining their helmets weren't. Regulation-approved. A place where joy mattered more than uniformity. I didn't just want to own the HOA. I wanted to own the neighborhood, literally. And the crazy part? I could. Because while Karen was busy filing complaints, I was busy looking at property records. And what I found was shocking. A surprising number of homes in the neighborhood were either in foreclosure or for sale. The market had dipped, interest rates were climbing, and some people just wanted out. What if I bought them? One by one, piece by piece, until eventually the whole neighborhood belonged to me. Then no HOA, no Karen. No outdated bylaws could stop me. I could transform it into the world's first true suburban dog paradise. A dream, a sanctuary. Max's kingdom. The next morning, I called my bank, and just like that, the plan was in motion. Asterisk, asterisk, the first house I bought was 2 doors down from mine. A small, beige 2-story that had been sitting empty for months. The previous owners got relocated for work and couldn't keep up with 2 mortgages. They were desperate to sell. So I made them an offer, cash, quick, no contingencies. They jumped at it. And just like that, I owned not 1, but 2 homes in the neighborhood you should have seen. Karen's face when the moving trucks left and I stood on the porch holding the keys. If glares could kill, Max and I would have been 6 feet under right there. But I didn't stop. Every week, I combed the listings, foreclosures, for sale signs. Rumors of neighbors planning to move. I was everywhere, at open houses, on the phone with realtors, even knocking on doors with, "Hey, if you're thinking of selling, I'll buy direct." It was like Monopoly. Except the pieces were real houses and the stakes were my neighborhood. Within 6 months, I owned 4 homes. A year later, 10. And each time I bought one, I made the same change. The backyard became part of Max's expanding kingdom. Fences came down, lawns opened up, and one by one, the houses connected into what I started calling the Green Belt, a secret dog park running through the neighborhood, hidden behind houses stretching further every month. Neighbors who supported me got invites. Their dogs ran free in this underground canine utopia, while Karen's poor schnauzer, Muffin, was stuck behind her perfect white picket fence. I didn't gloat. Not out loud, anyway. But let's just say Max and I enjoyed our evening walks a little more knowing Karen was watching us from her window, steam practically rising from her ears. But Karen wasn't done. If there's one thing about people like her, it's this. They don't lose quietly. She started digging. Not just into the HOA bylaws this time, but into me. My finances, my purchases, my permits. I had nothing to hide, but Karen was determined to find anything she could use against me. One day, I found a note taped to my door. It wasn't signed. But I knew who it was from. You might think you're clever, but you're breaking zoning laws. Subdivisions aren't dog parks. I've contacted the county. Zoning laws? Of course she had .c. Turning backyards into one giant green belt was fun and technically harmless, but in the eyes of the county, I was starting to blur lines. Property lines. Usage codes. Liability issues. Karen had found her weapon, and she wielded it like a sword. The county inspector showed up. On a Wednesday morning, clipboard, hard hat. Reflective vest. He looked around at the wide-open backyards where dogs were running wild and just shook his head. "This isn't up to code," he said flatly. "These properties are zoned as private residences, not a public park." I tried to explain. "It's not a public park, it's private property. I own these homes. I'm just connecting them." He gave me that look bureaucrats have perfected. The one that says, "You think you found a loophole, but I've crushed bigger dreams than yours before breakfast." He handed me a notice. I had 30 days to restore compliance. In other words, put all the fences back up, or face fines and potential lawsuits. I could practically hear Karen cackling from her kitchen window. Most people would have folded right there. Most people would have said, "Okay, fine." I tried, but not me, because while Karen thought she'd outsmarted me, she forgot one thing. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. By now, I had an army. Every neighbor who'd watched their kids laugh at the block party. Every family who'd seen their dogs run free in the green belt. Every retiree who'd realized life was better without grass. Police. Measuring their lawn, they had my back. And when the county gave me 30 days to shut it down, we used those 30 days to fight back. We organized. We held rallies. We started petitions. I even launched a website, freethepaws.com, complete with pictures of happy dogs and smiling kids enjoying the new spaces. It blew up. Local news picked it up. Then regional news. Suddenly, I wasn't just some guy fighting an HOA. Fani was the man trying to turn suburbia into a dog utopia. The support poured in. Donations, volunteers, hashtags trending. People showed up from outside the neighborhood just to walk their dogs on our trails before the county shut us down. And the county, they weren't ready for the backlash. The inspector came back looking overwhelmed. "I don't make the rules," he muttered. "This is bigger than me." I smiled. "Good. Then let's take it bigger." We appealed. We lobbied. We argued that what we were doing wasn't breaking zoning laws, was evolving them. Why should a suburban lawn be sacred, but not the happiness of families and pets? Why should old rules written decades ago hold back community progress? The fight dragged on for weeks. Karen filed complaint after complaint. The county delayed, stalled, sent more inspectors, and then something unexpected happened. One night, during a neighborhood meeting, Karen made a mistake. A big one. She got up in front of everyone, red-faced and furious, and shouted, "This neighborhood doesn't need dogs running around. It doesn't need kids screaming in the streets. It needs order." Silence. Everyone just stared at her, and in that silence, something shifted. People realized it wasn't about zoning laws for Karen. It wasn't about property values. It was about control. She didn't want a neighborhood. She wanted a kingdom. And in that moment, She lost whatever support she had left. I'd like to say it was smooth sailing after that, but you know better. Karen wasn't done. Not by a long shot. She took it national. She went on morning talk shows, framing me as some kind of anarchist destroying suburban America. Headlines screamed, "Man turns neighborhood into a legal dog park and suburban. Rebellion threatens property values nationwide." And for the first time, I felt the weight of what I'd started, because this wasn't just about Max anymore. This was a war between the old way of living, rigid, rule-bound, uniform, and a new way, messy, joyful, alive. And I wasn't backing down. Because Max never did. Asterisk, asterisk. The letter came in a thick envelope with fancy lettering across the top. Superior Court of County name. Lawsuit. Karen had officially declared war. I sat at my kitchen table, Max at my feet, chewing his toy duck, and read through page after page of legal jargon. At its core, the claim was simple. I was illegally altering the neighborhood's intended purpose, endangering property values, and violating zoning regulations. In plain English, this guy's dog park dream is ruining my life. She wanted the court to order me to stop, refence all the properties, and pay damages. Damages for what? Joy, barking, happiness. I laughed out loud, but my stomach twisted. This wasn't just HOA letters anymore. This was serious. Courts meant lawyers. Lawyers meant money. And money meant, well, let's just say I wasn't broke. But buying up houses like Monopoly, Squares wasn't exactly cheap. Karen knew that this wasn't about winning the case. This was about bleeding me. I needed backup. So I called the only lawyer I knew personally, my college buddy, Nate. Nate wasn't some high-powered corporate shark. He was a scrappy attorney who specialized in small business disputes and the occasional divorce. But what Nate lacked in polish, he made up for in fight. When I showed him the lawsuit, he raised an eyebrow. "She really hates you, huh? You think?" He flipped through the stack, chuckling under his breath. "Half of this is nonsense. Excessive canine activity." "What does that even mean?" "Dogs existing." I grinned. "Tell that to Karen." Nate leaned back, lacing his fingers behind his head. "Okay, we've got a shot. But we're not just going to defend. We're going to counterpunch." Counterpunch. Yeah, if she wants to drag you to court, let's drag her right back. Harassment, abuse of process. Maybe even defamation with all the stuff she's saying on TV. I swear. In that moment, Nate looked less like a lawyer and more like a street fighter in a suit. I liked it. The first court date was surreal. I walked into the courthouse in my best attempt at respectable suburban dad attire, button-down shirt, khakis. No tie, because ties make me look like I'm about to sell you life insurance. Karen was already there. Perfectly pressed blazer, pearl necklace, hair so stiff it probably didn't move in a hurricane. She had an expensive-looking lawyer next to her, the kind who probably bills more in an hour than I spend on dog food in a month. She gave me a smirk as I sat down. Max wasn't allowed in the courtroom, but I swear I could feel him growling in spirit. The judge came in, and the battle began. Karen's lawyer painted me as some kind of reckless rebel. "Your Honor, this man is destabilizing the neighborhood. He's endangering property values, creating noise and chaos, and violating zoning laws. This is not a dog park, it's a residential subdivision. He is quite literally destroying the community." The words "destroying the community" echoed through the courtroom like a hammer. Then Nate stood up. "Your Honor, with all due respect, what my client has done is not destruction, it's transformation. The community isn't being harmed. It's thriving. Families are happier, dogs are healthier, people are connecting like never before. This is not chaos. This is community at its best. He flipped open a binder full of photos, kids on bikes, neighbors laughing together, dogs racing through the green belt, elderly couples sitting on benches. Smiling, the judge raised an eyebrow. Even I felt chills. Karen shifted uncomfortably. In her chair, court cases aren't decided in one day, though. That was just the opening round. Over the next few weeks, it turned into a full-blown war of paperwork, witnesses, and arguments. Karen paraded neighbors to testify against me. Some complained about barking, others about traffic from visitors who wanted to see the green belt. But for every complaint, we had double the support. Moms testified about how their kids finally had safe spaces to play. Retirees talked about how they felt part of the community again. Dog owners practically wept on the stand, describing how much it meant to see their pets so free and happy. It was messy, emotional sometimes. Even funny, like the guy who admitted, under oath, that he only moved into the neighborhood because of the dog park vibes. Karen's lawyer rolled his eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. The real turning point, though, came when Nate pulled out his ace card. "Your Honor," he said, "we'd like to introduce Exhibit B." He played a clip from one of Karen's TV interviews. There she was, on national television, practically shouting, "This neighborhood doesn't need dogs. It doesn't need kids screaming in the streets. It needs order, and I'll make sure it has it." The courtroom went silent. The judge leaned forward. "Ms. Johnson, did you say this?" Karen stammered, Well, that was taken out of context. Answer the question." "Yes." And right there, her mask cracked, because suddenly, it wasn't about zoning laws or property values. It was about Karen's obsession with control. The judge didn't make a ruling that day. Courts move slow, like molasses in January. But when we walked out of that room, I knew we'd won something even bigger than a verdict. We'd won the narrative. The neighborhood saw Karen for what she really was. Not a protector of property values, not a concerned citizen, just a bitter control freak who couldn't stand change. And me. I wasn't just the guy with the barking dog anymore. I was the one standing up for the future. Of course. Karen wasn't finished. Oh no, because if lawsuits and TV interviews didn't work, she had one more card to play. Politics.rumor started spreading that Karen was planning to run for county commissioner. That's right, the very people who controlled zoning laws, property codes, and the power to shut me down for good, if she won. The dog park dream would be over. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a neighborhood fight anymore. This was about to become a political war. Asterisk, the whispers started small. At first, I didn't believe them. Karen, running for office. I laughed when Mrs. Thompson mentioned it at the dog zone one evening. What's her slogan? Make suburbia boring again. But then I saw the signs. Literally, bright red, bold letters, planted neatly in front yards like a creeping disease. Karen Johnson for county commissioner. I stopped laughing, because suddenly, this wasn't about our neighborhood anymore. If Karen won, she'd have real power, the kind that could rewrite zoning codes, shut down my entire green belt, and bleed me with lawsuits until I had nothing left. She wasn't just playing HOA dictator anymore. She was aiming for empire, I'll admit. I panicked for a day or two. Sat on the porch, Max curled at my feet, staring at those campaign signs popping up like weeds. If she won, it was over. But then I remembered something. Karen wasn't the only one who could rally people. I had the neighborhood. I had the dogs. I had the story. And if Karen wanted to take this fight to politics, fine, I'd meet her there. The first step was exposure. I doubled down on freethepaws.com, turning it from a local neighborhood blog into a full-on movement. We shared photos, testimonials, videos of kids laughing and dogs sprinting across the green belt. We framed it as bigger than just one neighborhood. It was a battle for the future of community living everywhere. And it worked. Donations poured in. Volunteers offered to canvass. Hashtags trended. Hashtag pause before politics and hashtag vote for joy. Karen had money and connections. But I had something she didn't. Authenticity. People trusted me because I wasn't running for power. I was fighting for happiness. Still, Karen played dirty. Her campaign ads were everywhere. Billboards, radio, even Facebook targeted ads that popped up while I scrolled late at night. Do you want barking chaos in your neighborhood? Protect your property values. Elect Karen Johnson. She painted me as a reckless anarchist, the man destroying suburbia. But the more she attacked, the more people saw her for what she was, obsessed, bitter, clinging to control, and the more she leaned on fear. The more I leaned on hope. One Saturday, we hosted what we called the Dog Parade of Freedom. Picture this, hundreds of people, leashes in hand, marching through the neighborhood with their dogs. Big dogs, little dogs, mutts, purebreds, all of them wagging, barking, strutting like furry soldiers. Kids carried signs. Dogs deserve space. Karen hates puppies. Vote joy, not fear. Local news showed up. Then regional. Before long, national outlets picked up the footage. It went viral. The headline? Suburban Dog Army marches against commissioner candidate. Karen tried to spin it as radical chaos. But when millions of people are watching a golden retriever in a tutu proudly marching down the street, nobody sees chaos, they see joy. Of course, joy alone doesn't win elections. Votes do so. I got serious. I organized town halls, met with civic groups, even sat down with skeptical retirees who didn't own dogs. I told them the truth. This isn't just about pets. It's about freedom. About making neighborhoods places where people actually want to live. Not places policed by outdated rules and power-hungry leaders. I promised safer parks, better walking paths, more community events, and slowly, I saw the tide turning. Karen, meanwhile, grew desperate. Her speeches got angrier. Her ads, nastier. She claimed I was secretly funded by big dog food companies. She accused me of trying to start a cult. At one debate, she actually shouted, "This man wants to replace order with barking madness." The room went silent. Then someone's pug barked, and the whole crowd erupted in laughter. Karen's face turned redder than her campaign signs. But just when I thought I had it in the bag, she pulled her dirtiest trick yet, a week before the election. She filed for an emergency injunction. She claimed the Greenbelt was unsafe, dogs fighting, kids getting hurt, unsanitary conditions. She presented evidence, blurry photos, exaggerated reports, testimonies from a handful of her loyalists. The county judge, probably tired of the circus, granted a temporary shutdown, effective immediately. No dogs allowed on the Greenbelt until after a full safety review. It was like someone flipped a switch. Overnight, the joy was gone. The backyards went silent. Max sat by the fence, staring at the empty grass where his friends used to run. Karen paraded around, like she'd already won. This is just the beginning. She sneered when a reporter stuck a mic in her face. Order will return. For the first time, I felt doubt. Because if Karen took the Greenbelt away before Election Day, she might just win. I had to act fast, so I called an emergency neighborhood meeting. Hundreds packed into the community center, standing room only. People looked to me, waiting, hoping. I stood at the front, Max at my side, and took a deep breath. They think they can shut us down, I said. They think this neighborhood doesn't matter, that dogs don't matter, that we don't matter. But they're wrong. This isn't about one park or one dog. This is about all of us deciding what kind of community we want to live in. Do we want fear, rules, control? Or do we want joy, freedom, and a neighborhood that actually feels alive? The room erupted in cheers. Someone shouted, "We want joy." Another yelled, "Free the paws." And just like that, the doubt melted away because I realized Karen could take down the Greenbelt for a week, a month, even a year. But she couldn't take down the spirit of the people. And if the people stood with me, I had nothing to fear. Election day came. The neighborhood was buzzing signs everywhere. Volunteers handing out flyers. Dogs wearing little Vote Joy bandanas. Karen showed up to the polling station in a stiff suit, scowling as she walked past the line of voters, smiling at Max and his campaign manager. The tension was electric, and when the results finally came in, the entire county seemed to hold its breath. Election night, the votes trickled in, precinct by precinct. On one side of the community center, Karen's supporters huddled together, whispering nervously. On the other, neighbors sat with their dogs' leashes wrapped around chairs, tails wagging, bowls of water set out like we were at some political pet rally. Max sat by my feet, calm as ever. I envied him. My stomach was a blender set to puree. The first numbers came up on the projector. Karen ahead, by a lot. Gasps. A few groans. Karen smiled, her pearl necklace gleaming under the fluorescent lights like a shark's toothy grin. I kept my face neutral. It was early. The next wave of results rolled in. The gap narrowed. My supporters cheered. Dogs barked in chorus, tails thumping against the linoleum floor. Karen's smile faltered by the third update. We were neck and neck, and by the fourth, I pulled ahead. Barely. Every update after that was a nail-biter. One moment I was up by a handful of votes. The next, It was like watching two runners trade the lead. The finish line looming closer and closer. By midnight, the room was electric. People were chanting, clapping, dogs howling like backup singers in some wild protest song. Karen sat stiffly in her chair, arms crossed, face frozen in that tight, furious smile. And then the final update. The county official tapped the mic. With all precincts reporting, the winner of the county commissioner's seat is time slowed. Not Karen Johnson. The room exploded. People screamed, cried, hugged. Dogs barked and jumped into their owner's arms. Mrs. Thompson fainted into a plate of cookies. Max looked up at me, tongue lolling, as if to say, "We did it." I knelt down, hugging him tight. "Yeah, buddy, we really did." Karen stormed out, cameras flashing as reporters swarmed her. "This isn't over." She shouted, "You'll regret this. Every one of you." But her voice was drowned out by the noise of celebration. For the first time in a long time, the neighborhood felt free. I'd beaten the HOA. I'd beaten her lawsuits. And now, I'd beaten her politically. We were unstoppable, or so I thought, the next morning. I woke up to a knock at the door. A man in a suit stood there, holding a briefcase. Not a reporter. Not a neighbor. He handed me a thick envelope. "Consider this a courtesy," he said. "You'll want to read it carefully." I opened it as soon as he left. Inside was a formal notice from a real estate development corporation. Apparently, Karen had friends in higher places. And while she'd lost the election, she hadn't lost her grudge. She'd reached out to developers, pitching them on the idea that our neighborhood was ripe for redevelopment. And now they were moving in, buying homes, making offers, planning a massive tear-down project to turn our quirky little dog paradise into rows of luxury condos. My heart sank. This wasn't just about HOA rules anymore. This was about survival. I gathered the neighbors that night. We crammed into the largest backyard of the Greenbelt, fire pits glowing, dogs chasing each other in the shadows. I held up the letter. "They're coming," I said simply. Developers? They want to wipe all of this out. The greenbelt, the homes, everything. Gasps, anger, fear. But we're not going down without a fight. Cheers. I told them the truth. Karen may have lost her seat, but she wasn't done. She wanted to erase everything we'd built, and this time the battle wasn't just about rules. It was about money. Big money. The kind of money that doesn't care about dogs or kids or neighbors. The kind that sees homes as numbers on a spreadsheet. And if we wanted to save our community, we'd have to stand together stronger than ever. Over the next few weeks, it was war in a different form. Developers started sending letters to homeowners, flashy offers. Above market value, cash in hand, no hassle. Some neighbors were tempted. Who wouldn't be? It's hard to say no to a fat check waved in your face, but most resisted. They loved what we'd built. They didn't want to trade it for condos and parking garages. I spent every day knocking on doors, holding meetings, answering questions, reminding people they can't buy the neighborhood if we don't sell. It was exhausting, but it was working. Until one night, a sold sign went up, and then another. And another. The developers had cracked the wall. I felt the weight of it pressing down. For every house I'd bought, they bought too. For every neighbor I convinced to stay, they convinced one to leave. The neighborhood was turning into a battlefield of signs. Not for sale versus sold. It was a war of attrition, and I was running out of time one evening. I sat on the porch with Max, staring at the row of fresh sold signs glowing under the streetlights. "Buddy," I muttered, rubbing behind his ears. "They're going to take it all." He leaned into me, warm and steady, reminding me of why I'd started all this in the first place. Because dogs don't care about property values or politics. They care about joy, freedom, love, and suddenly it hit me. If the developers were playing with money, I had to play with heart. We didn't just need resistance, we needed a revolution. Asterisk, asterisk, when the developers came knocking. I think that it would be easy. Throw some money at suburban families. Promise a clean buyout. Replace yards with condos. And boom dash profit. But they underestimated something. They underestimated us, because we weren't just a subdivision anymore. We were a movement. The first spark came from a teenager named Mia. She was only 16, but she had a TikTok account with a small following. One evening, she filmed a shaky video of her golden retriever chasing a frisbee across the green belt at sunset. The caption: "Developers want to bulldoze this joy for condos. Should we let them?" Within days, it hit 1 million views. #SaveThePaws started trending. Then came the Instagram Reels, the YouTube Shorts, the Twitter storms. Parents filmed toddlers giggling as puppies licked their faces. Joggers filmed their morning runs through the park, captioned with, "Would you trade this for concrete?" Seniors posted selfies with their old hounds, declaring, "I want to spend my last years here, not in a parking lot." It spread like wildfire, suddenly. Our neighborhood wasn't just fighting developers. We were fighting for every neighborhood. I doubled down. I turned freethepaws.com into a full campaign hub. We posted updates, petitions, donation links. We had t-shirts printed, "Paws over profit." Stickers, "Dogs, not condos." Volunteers started canvassing, not just in our county, but in nearby towns. People who'd never set foot in our neighborhood donated money, sent letters of support, even showed up to protest, and the media ate it up. CNN, BuzzFeed, The Today Show. The headline: "Suburb versus Developers. Can a dog park defeat corporate America?" Of course, Karen wasn't about to let us have all the attention. She resurfaced like a villain in a bad sequel, sitting down with business networks and local radio. "This neighborhood is toxic," she declared. "It's unruly, dangerous. This so-called movement is nothing but chaos. Developers will bring stability, order, and value. Order, always. Order with her, but the cracks were showing. The public didn't see her as a leader anymore. They saw her as the bitter face of everything soulless about suburbia. Still, she wasn't powerless. One morning, bulldozers rolled up to the edge of the green belt. I ran out, heart pounding. Neighbors pouring from their houses. A man in a hardette waved a stack of papers. We've got permits. Surveying starts today. Surveying. A foot in the door. No way, I shot back. This land isn't yours. Bought from the county, he said smugly. Fast-tracked, legal. I felt my blood go cold. Karen, she'd lost the election, but she still had friends in the right offices. Friends who could shuffle paperwork through when no one was looking. Within minutes, a line of dogs and humans blocked the bulldozers. Neighbors linked arms, chanting, "Our park, our home. Leave the paws alone." The workers hesitated. Cameras appeared. Live streams went up. The bulldozers turned around. We won the battle, but war was just beginning. That night, I barely slept. My phone buzzed non-stop interview requests. Angry voicemails, donation alerts, threats. The developers weren't backing down. They had money, lawyers, patience, and me. I had a community running on hope and adrenaline. But hope doesn't pay court fees. I sat in the dark, Max's head on my knee, wondering how long we could hold out, then ping, an email. Subject, we want to help. It was from a law firm. Pro bono. They specialized in land disputes and eminent domain cases. They'd seen our story online, and they wanted in. For the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe. We had lawyers. We had a chance. The developers struck back fast. Billboards went up. Condos bring jobs. Stop the chaos. Progress over pets. TV ads blasted us as radicals who hate growth. Karen herself narrated one. Do you want barking dogs? Lawsuits. An endless drama. Do you want stability, peace, and prosperity? I nearly choked on my coffee when I saw it. She was their spokesperson. Now, the woman who once fined me over Max's barking was now the face of a multi-million-dollar corporate smear campaign. It would have been funny if it wasn't so terrifying. But the thing about smear campaigns, they backfire when you're fighting against puppies, because no matter how much Karen droned about chaos, people only had to look at videos of kids laughing with dogs in the green belt to know who the good guys were. And every time a developer ad aired, donations to our cause doubled. We rallied harder. One weekend, we organized the Great Paws Dash in. Hundreds of us camped out on the greenbelt tents. Sleeping bags, fire pits, and of course, dogs curled up beside us. We live-streamed the whole thing. Music played, people told stories. Kids roasted marshmallows while dogs snuck bites. It wasn't just a protest, it was a celebration of what we were fighting for. By the next morning, millions had tuned in. Even celebrities started posting. A pop star tweeted, "Build joy, not condos. Hashtag save the paws." That's when I knew we weren't just a neighborhood anymore. We were a symbol. But symbols attract enemies. And one night, we got a wake-up call. I was asleep when Max growled low, "Steady." I sat up just as a loud boom shook the night. We ran outside. One of the storage sheds in the green belt where we kept lawn equipment and event supplies was on fire. Flames roared into the sky. Neighbors rushed with hoses, dogs barking frantically. Fire trucks wailed in the distance. By dawn, it was ashes. The official report called it accidental. But we knew. This was no accident. This was a warning. I stood in the smoking ruins. Max pressed close against my leg and swore silently to myself. Asterisk. The fire shook us, but it didn't break us. If anything, it hardened our resolve. Because if they were willing to burn down part of our neighborhood, then this wasn't just about land anymore. This was war, and the battlefield was about to move to court. The lawsuit came fast and heavy. Developers filed injunctions, claiming we were trespassing on their land. They demanded immediate clearance of the greenbelt, citing public safety. They wanted damages millions, enough to bankrupt every one of us if it stuck. Karen's name was all over the paperwork. She wasn't just a mouthpiece anymore. She was listed as a consultant to the developers. Of course, when she couldn't rule through the HOA. When she couldn't win through politics, she found her next weapon. The courtroom. I'll admit. Walking into that courthouse the first day rattled me. Marble floors. Cold, echoing halls. The kind of place where people like us were supposed to feel small. But then I looked behind me. Dozens of neighbors stood. Oh, shoulder. Some wore our paws over profit shirts. Others clutched leashes, their dogs waiting patiently outside with volunteers. And in the front row, little Mia, the teenager who'd started our viral storm, smiled at me like I was already a hero. I straightened my tie. We weren't small. We were mighty. The developers came in with an army. Sleek suits, briefcases, stacks of paper taller than me. Their lead attorney was the kind of guy you'd cast in a movie as evil lawyer number one, slicked hair, sharp jawline, smile that never reached his eyes. Karen strutted in behind them, pearls gleaming as if she owned the place. Our pro bono lawyers gave me a nod. "We've got this," they whispered, and for the first time, I believed it. The first few days were brutal. The developers painted us as radicals, anarchists who broke rules, disrupted peace, endangered kids. They played Karen's old greatest hits: barking dogs, alleged fights, unsanitary conditions. Karen herself took the stand, her voice dripping with venom. "This man," she said, pointing straight at me, "does not care about community. He thrives on chaos. He weaponized dogs against rules. He's turned decent families into a mob." For a moment, her words stung. But then I looked at Max's photo in my pocket, the first fine they'd sent me for his barking, and remembered why we were here. Because what she called chaos, we called life. Our turn came. Neighbors testified. Parents with kids. Seniors with therapy dogs. Veterans who said the green belt was the only reason they left the house some days. One by one, they told the judge the truth. This wasn't chaos. This was community. When Mia testified, the courtroom went silent. She talked about growing up shy, lonely, until her dog gave her the courage to meet people. She said the green belt saved her mental health. She said it wasn't just land, it was family. I swear, I saw the judge blink back tears. But the real bombshell came on the fourth day. Our lawyers dug into the county's records. The fast-tracked permits that let the developers move in so quickly. And what they found was dynamite. Emails, leaked memos, proof that Karen had secretly lobbied county officials, slipping them favors to grease the wheels. Expensive dinners, campaign donations, even promises of cushy HOA consulting contracts once the development went through. It was corruption, plain and simple. And suddenly, everything shifted. The developers' lawyers scrambled. They tried to dismiss it, call it irrelevant, say Karen was just a concerned citizen. But the damage was done. The courtroom buzzed like a hive. Reporters sprinted outside, dialing their editors. Karen's face went pale under the fluorescent lights. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. When I took the stand, I told it straight. I never wanted any of this. I just wanted my dog to be happy. But when you're told over and over that joy doesn't belong, hear that laughter. Barking and freedom are problems. What choice do you have but to fight back? We're not radicals. We're neighbors. And we don't want luxury condos. We want life. We want community. We want home. By the time I stepped down, the room was buzzing with quiet applause until the judge banged the gavel. The trial stretched on for weeks. Motions, objections, paperwork, stress, but with every day, Karen's credibility crumbled. The corruption evidence grew. The developer's image tanked. Public opinion, once shaky, solidified behind us by the final week. It didn't feel like us on trial anymore. It felt like them. Then came the verdict. We packed the courtroom. Holding hands, leashes looped around wrists, hearts pounding. The judge's voice was steady, formal. But to me, it sounded like thunder. The court finds in favor of the defendants. The green belt remains under community ownership. The injunction is void. Damages denied. The room erupted. People hugged. Dogs barked outside. Mia sobbed into her mom's shoulder. I closed my eyes, letting the weight slide off me like chains breaking. We'd won. But victory wasn't total. The judge didn't strip the developers of their purchased homes. Those still stood, scattered like scars through our neighborhood. And Karen. She wasn't arrested at least not yet. The county announced an ethics investigation. But we all knew how slow those wheels turned. She walked out of the courthouse, flanked by reporters. Face twisted with fury. "This isn't over," she hissed when one shoved a mic at her. Not by a long shot. And the way she said it made my stomach clench. Because even with the courtroom victory, I couldn't shake the feeling. Karen wasn't finished. She was just getting desperate. And desperate people are dangerous, ***, winning in court should have been the end. We'd beaten the HOA. We'd beaten Karen's smear campaigns. We'd beaten the developers' lawyers. By all logic, we should have been safe. But Karen wasn't logical anymore. She was cornered, exposed, desperate. And that's when people are at their most dangerous. The first signs were small. A tire slashed in the night. A mailbox smashed. Strange cars idling too long on our streets. At first, I brushed it off. Random vandalism, I told myself. But deep down, I knew Toanne was still pulling strings, and she was getting reckless. One evening, as I was closing the blinds, I saw her, standing at the edge of the green belt, just staring. No camera crews. No entourage. Just Karen, lit by the orange glow of a street lamp. Her face unreadable. Max growled low, pressing against my leg. When I blinked, she was gone. The next morning, rumors spread. One of the sold homes empty. Waiting for redevelopment had been broken into. Windows shattered. Spray paint on the walls. Dogs rule. Only problem, none of us had done it. We weren't vandals, but Karen seized on it instantly. See? She crowed to reporters. They're not a community. They're criminals, radicals, dangerous. It was a setup. I knew it, but proving it? That was harder. Tension in the neighborhood grew thick enough to choke on. Some neighbors whispered about leaving. Maybe it's not worth it, they said. Maybe we take the money and go. Others doubled down, vowing never to budge. The divide was real, and felt it tearing at me every day. Because if Karen couldn't beat us with rules, politics, or courts, she'd do the next best thing, make us turn on each other. Then came the night I'll never forget. It was late. I'd just taken Max out for his last walk. The streets quiet under the glow of porch lights. That's when I heard its footsteps behind me. I turned, but no one was there. Max tensed, ears pricked. A low growl vibrating through him. "Hello?" I called out, silence. Then, dash crash. A brick shattered the window of my living room. Glass sprayed across the floor. Max barked like mad, lunging toward the house. My heart pounded as I bolted inside. Grabbing the brick taped to it was a note for words. Written in sharp, angry scrawl. "Leave, or else." The cops came. But it was the same old routine sympathy. A filed report. Promises to look into it. I knew how it worked. By the time they found anything, it'd be too late. Karen wanted me gone. And now she'd moved past politics. Past law, this was personal. I called an emergency neighborhood meeting the next day. Everyone packed into the community center, nervous, whispering. Some looked at me like I was already beaten. I held up the brick. "They want us scared," I said. "They want us divided. But we can't give them that." Because this, I tossed the brick onto the table with a heavy thud, isn't just a threat to me. It's a threat to all of us. Murmurs. Uneasy glances. I pressed on. We've beaten them at every turn. HOA fines, elections, courts, and now they're trying to scare us out. But we don't scare easy. Not anymore. I looked at Max, who sat tall and proud beside me. We're not just fighting for dogs. We're fighting for our homes, for our families, for our lives here. So I have one question. Are we giving up, or are we fighting back? The room erupted. Cheers, clapping, chants. Fight back. Fight back. For the first time in days, hope sparked again. But Karen wasn't finished. A week later, just as the neighborhood found its courage again, the developers made their boldest move yet. They announced demolition would begin. Not someday, immediately. They claimed they had the permits, the legal rights, the money to push forward. And Karen, ever the loyal mouthpiece, was right there at the press conference, smiling like a queen returning to her throne. This neighborhood had its chance, she said. But order will be restored. Order. Always that word, it made my skin crawl. That night, the green belt filled with people. No one told them to come. They just showed up. With tents, lanterns, lawn chairs, a living, breathing wall of resistance. If the bulldozers came, they'd have to drive through us to touch a single blade of grass. It was beautiful, but it was terrifying. 2. Because if Karen and the developers wanted to force the issue, things could get ugly fast. As I sat by the fire pit, Max's head resting on my knee, I realized something chilling. We'd fought battles with rules, votes, and legal papers. But this wasn't that kind of fight anymore. This was the kind that could end in broken bones. Or worse. And I knew, deep down, the final confrontation was coming. Karen wouldn't stop until she had her pound of flesh, and neither would we. The night before the demolition deadline. The Greenbelt didn't sleep. Hundreds of neighbors camped out under the stars. Lanterns glowed. Fire pits crackled. Dogs dozed beside their owners, tails twitching in dreams. It should have felt peaceful, but it didn't, because we all knew tomorrow would decide everything at sunrise. The sound hit us first. Engines, heavy. Low, then came the bulldozers. Rolling down the street like tanks, a convoy of machines built to erase everything we loved. Behind them, security guards, workers in vests. And at the front, perched smugly in a black SUV, was Karen. Pearls gleaming, smile sharp as glass. "This is the end," she said into the swarm of cameras. "Today, order returns." We didn't move. The crowd of us 100 strong stood shoulder to shoulder. Some with arms linked, others holding signs. Children sat on their parents' shoulders. Dogs barked, growled, tails stiff with instinct. I stepped forward, Max at my side. "This is our home," I shouted, voice raw but steady. "If you want it gone, you'll have to take us with it." The crowd roared, "Our home! Our home!" The bulldozers idled, engines revving like beasts hungry for steel and dirt. The workers looked nervous. They hadn't signed up to mow down families and dogs. But Karen, she smirked, "Move them," she snapped. The guards advanced, trying to push through the line. Tension crackled like a live wire. People shouted, dogs barked furiously. The air electric with fear and defiance. Then it happened. A golden retriever slipped its leash, darting forward. A little girl screamed, chasing after him. The bulldozer lurched forward. At the same moment, my heart stopped. I sprinted. Max bolted beside me. We reached her just in time, scooping her into my arms as Max barked wildly, forcing the driver to slam the brakes. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed in that split second. The whole world saw what was really happening. This wasn't progress. This was madness. The tide turned, the workers backed off, shaking their heads. "We didn't sign up for this," one muttered, throwing his vest down. One by one, they walked away. Even the security guards lowered their hands, uncomfortable. But Karen, she lost it. "Cowards!" she shrieked. "All of you. Don't you see? Without rules, without order, it's chaos. Chaos." Her voice cracked, wild, desperate. She lunged toward me, finger stabbing the air. This is your fault. You ruined everything." And that's when it happened. The crowd started, chanting dot, not against the developers, not against the machines, against her, Karen. "Step down, Karen. Step down." The sound was deafening. Karen's face twisted. Rage and fear colliding. For the first time, she realized she wasn't feared, she was hated, and she was finished. The county officials arrived within hours. Seeing the footage plastered all over national news, they had no choice. The permits revoked, the development deal canceled. Karen hauled off for questioning on corruption charges. Just like that. The bulldozers were gone, and the green belt was safe. That night, we gathered one last time on the grass. Neighbors laughed. Kids played. Dogs sprinted free under the moonlight. I sat by the fire pit, Max curled at my side, staring up at the stars. We'd fought through. Fines, elections, lawsuits, threats, even fire and bulldozers, and we'd won. Not because of me, because of us, because a neighborhood. Isn't fences and rules, it's people. And dogs. And the joy they bring. A week later, the county voted to officially designate the Greenbelt as protected land. It would never be sold, never be bulldozed, and to my surprise, they gave it a new name. Max's Park, after the dog whose barking had started it all. I laughed when they told me. All he ever wanted was to chase squirrels. But deep down, I knew Max hadn't just chased squirrels. He'd chased us all into something bigger. Freedom. So, if you ever hear barking in the night, don't think of it as noise. Think of it as joy refusing to be silenced. Because sometimes, one bark can start a revolution. And sometimes, that revolution can save a home. Asterisk, asterisk, and ... That's a wrap. A huge thank you to everyone for watching. This channel is nothing without this amazing community. If you have ideas for future videos, drop them down in the comments below. As always, subscribe if you're new here. Until next time, take care.